"You sound like him," she said. The words a low hum that seemed to vibrate not just the air, but the very rust and decay clinging to the bulkhead behind him. Cale froze, hand on the access panel he'd been trying to pry open. The sound wasn't just auditory. It had a strange resonance that tickled his teeth and settled deep in his chest, a sensation entirely alien. He turned slowly, his multi-tool humming impatiently in his grip. She was standing maybe 10 feet away, just outside the shimmer of his work light, a shape draped in something that looked like cryo-shroud, but moved with unexpected grace for someone he'd thawed out of a deep space freezer less than an hour ago. He couldn't make out many details in the gloom, deliberately kept his light focused elsewhere. Minimal visuals, maximum caution. "Like who?" he asked, his own voice rough from days, breathing recycled air and the metallic tang of this derelict hull. He kept his tone neutral, but inside, every wire was taut. Finding cryopods on dead ships usually meant bad news. Either they were booby-trapped, full of corpses, or contained something someone else wanted badly. He'd just been hoping for salvageable tech. She hadn't been in his manifest. "My mate," she replied, the word tasting foreign on her tongue. Or perhaps it was just the translation struggling. Her posture shifted, a subtle tilt of her head that felt profoundly curious. The resonance. It is the same frequency, the same timbre. Cale blinked. Resonance? Timbre? He wasn't a musician, he was a scavenger. "Look, lady, or whatever you are, I pulled you out of a box. You were frozen solid. For how long I don't even know. Maybe you're confused." A soft, almost musical sound escaped her. Something that might have been laughter or a sigh, impossible to tell. It held that same unsettling vibration. "Confusion is possible," she admitted, and he heard the effort in her voice, the way she seemed to be actively assembling human language. "My last memory is different, much different, but the voice, it resonates. It matches the pattern." He ran a hand over the stubble on his chin, eyes scanning the dark corners of the bay. This wasn't going like a typical salvage. Typical involved cutting metal, avoiding traps, and maybe shooting a rival scavenger. It didn't involve cryptic aliens comparing his vocal cords to their centuries-dead partner. "Pattern? What pattern are you talking about?" "Our bond," she said simply, as if explaining something obvious. "The resonance of the vocal cords. It is unique to a mated pair. A lock and a key. Yours."
It is his key.
Okay, that was officially weirder than the time he'd found a sentient can opener. He lowered his multi-tool slowly, but didn't put it away. "A key? To what? And I don't have a mate pattern with anyone, alien or otherwise." His voice was flat, deliberately devoid of any resonance she might latch onto. It felt like she was trying to hook onto something inside him, something he kept locked down tight. She took a step forward, and his light caught a faint shimmer around her form, a subtle internal light that pulsed in time with her breath. It wasn't just reflection. It was coming from her. It was muted now, but he wondered what it would look like brighter. It made her shape less distinct, more like an aura. "Perhaps you are not aware," she suggested, her voice losing the earlier fragility, gaining a quiet intensity that drew his attention despite his best efforts. "The deep freeze, it can alter things, memories, perceptions, but the fundamental resonance, it is not easily changed." He took a step back, putting a bit more space between them. The air in the bay felt suddenly thick. "Look, I don't know what kind of weird biology you've got going on, but I'm just Cale. I was here for scrap metal. I found you. Now I need to figure out what to do with you." He gestured vaguely around the rusted bay. "This ship's dead. Been dead a long time. It's not going anywhere." Her head tilted again. "Dead? No. Dormant. Resting." The shimmer around her pulsed brighter for a moment, like a silent emphasis. "It awaits the resonance." The key. His blood ran cold. He hadn't just thawed out an alien. He'd apparently woken up something ancient, tied to his voice, and maybe tied to this entire derelict Leviathan. The possibility that he had just unlocked a centuries-old problem with his vocal cords was absurd, terrifying, and intensely annoying. He felt a prickle of raw, sensory curiosity, mixed with a deep-seated urge to run. He settled for holding his ground, watching her, the faint glow of her form, the only real detail he could process in the oppressive darkness. The air thrummed faintly with that resonance, emanating from her now, a silent question she seemed to be posing to the dead ship, or maybe just to him. He didn't like questions he didn't have answers to, especially when they involved his own voice being a key. "So you think my voice," Cale repeated, making sure he understood this escalating absurdity, "can wake up this dormant ship?" She glided closer, her movements unnervingly smooth. The faint internal light pulsed, and as she drew near, he felt a subtle warmth radiating from her. Not body heat, but something else, an energy that resonated with the thrumming in his chest. He fought the instinct to back away further. He needed answers, even if they were insane. "Not just your voice, Cale," she corrected softly. Her voice, up close, had layers he hadn't heard before, like distant chimes, echoing in deep water. "Your voice, with this resonance pattern. The pattern of my mate. The key is formed by proximity." She extended a hand towards him, not quite touching, but close enough that he could see the faint structure beneath the shimmering light. The suggestion of fingers. The glow intensified around her hand, mirroring the faint vibration he felt in his own bones. The resonance amplifies. It focuses. He stared at her hand, then at her obscured form, a knot of apprehension tightening in his gut. Proximity? Resonance amplification. This was moving way beyond scrap metal and into dangerous unknown territory. His instincts screamed caution, but a deeper, more primitive part of him was captivated by the sheer alienness of it, and by the unsettling connection she claimed existed between his very voice and her ancient, lost world. He didn't move. He couldn't. The air felt electric, humming with that low frequency. And he realized, with a jolt, that it wasn't just her emitting it now, it was him too. Or something about his presence near her was drawing it out of the dead ship itself. The silence of the derelict wasn't silence at all. It was a low, patient waiting.
"Okay," Cale said.
His voice carefully measured, trying to keep it steady, despite the strange vibration in his chest. "Let's back up a second. Who are you? What is this ship? And why were you frozen?" She lowered her hand, the shimmer around it receding slightly, but not vanishing. She didn't seem offended by his questions, only thoughtful. "I am Lyra," she said. The name felt right, fitting the melodic undertones of her voice. "This vessel is the heart of the Vespera. It is our sanctuary, our seed ark. It was meant to carry us to safety." Cale swallowed, the sound loud in the sudden stillness. Seed ark, sanctuary. This wasn't just a ship. It was something else entirely. "Carried you from what?" Lyra's form seemed to dim slightly, the internal light flickering like a struggling flame. A tangible wave of something, grief, regret, washed over him, not through sound, but through that strange resonance. He felt it in his teeth again. "From the scourge," she said, the word like shattered glass. "They consume, they annihilate. We fled, a desperate flight. The heart was wounded, critically. We enacted the stasis protocol, for the few who remained, to wait, to heal, to find the key, the scourge." He'd heard whispers, ghost stories among deep space haulers, about something that wiped out whole sectors centuries ago. Thought it was just myth. Now one of the survivors was standing in front of him, saying his voice was a key to her ark. It was too much. He wanted to laugh at the sheer impossibility, or maybe just curl up in a ball. He settled for a sardonic twist of his lips. "So let me get this straight. Your entire species is mostly gone. You were frozen here for centuries, and now you wake up and decide my voice, some random human scavenger's voice, is the magic key to your escape route." Lyra straightened, and the faint glow around her solidified, slightly, giving her form a definite, albeit vague, outline. There was a quiet dignity about her, even in the tattered shroud. "It is not magic, Cale. It is resonance. Biology. Our bonds are deeply ingrained. They resonate with the heart itself. My mate." His resonance pattern was integral to the heart's core functions. Without it, or one like it, the vessel remains dormant. She paused, and he felt her gaze on him, even though he couldn't see her eyes clearly. Finding you, with that specific pattern, after so long, it is beyond chance. He rubbed the back of his neck, feeling the fine hairs there stand on end. Beyond chance. He hated beyond chance. Chance he could understand. Chance was getting a good score on a salvage run, or getting shot at by rivals. This felt like destiny, or some cosmic joke, and Cale was not a believer in either. His past had taught him that the only reliable forces in the universe were entropy and betrayal. Maybe it's a glitch, he muttered, more to himself than her. Cryo-sickness, whatever. It is not a glitch, Lyra said, her voice firm. It is recognition. The heart recognizes the resonance. It stirs, as if on cue. A low, deep hum started somewhere far within the ship's hull. It wasn't the grating sound of dying machinery, but a resonant thrum that mirrored the vibration in his chest, amplifying it, making his teeth ache. It felt like the ship was indeed waking, stretching after a long sleep, and it was responding to his voice near her. He felt a jolt of fear mixed with something else, a strange sense of power, however accidental. His gaze flickered around the dark bay, suddenly feeling very exposed. If the ship was stirring, were other systems coming online? Was he trapped? Or worse, was he now broadcasting his location to whatever scourge he'd been running from? Okay, Cale said, his voice sharper now, edged with real urgency. Okay, let's assume for the sake of argument that you're right. My voice is the key. What exactly does this key do? And what do we do now? Because sitting here in the dark hoping this rust bucket flies itself isn't a plan. He needed action. Something concrete to ground him after this plunge into the utterly bizarre. He needed to take control of the situation, even if it was just by figuring out the next step. Lyra took another step towards him, closing the distance until they were only a couple of feet apart. The radiant warmth from her was more noticeable now, comforting and unsettling at the same time. The internal glow brightened a little more, allowing him to perceive a more defined outline of her face, the tilt of her head, the suggestion of large observant eyes behind the shimmer. He still couldn't make out specific features, which was somehow more intimate and more alien than seeing her clearly would have been. He was reacting to pure presence, energy, and that strange shared vibration. The key, it allows access, she explained, her voice lower, more private, to the command core, to awaken the vessel fully, to plot a course, to restart life support beyond this minimal cycle. She paused, her head tilting again, and he felt the weight of her non-visual gaze. What we do now, Cale, we go to the core, together. His breath hitched, together. The word hung in the air between them, heavy with unspoken implications. He'd spent years alone, scavenging on the fringe, trusting no one. Now this ancient alien woman, who claimed his voice was tied to her deepest cultural bond, wanted him to journey into the heart of her dead ship. It was dangerous, illogical, and terrifying. It was also the most compelling invitation he'd received in a long time. The low thrum of the ship seemed to pulse with anticipation, urging him forward. He felt the strange resonance in his chest intensify, a physical pull towards her, towards the ship, towards the unknown. He needed to say no, to explain all the reasons this was a terrible idea, but the words wouldn't come. His gaze was fixed on the subtle light emanating from her, the silent promise of mystery and connection. Okay, Cale said finally, the single word feeling like a massive concession. He didn't know why he agreed. Maybe it was the sheer absurdity of it all. Maybe it was the low, insistent hum of the ship calling. Or maybe, just maybe, it was the way her presence seemed to fill the empty spaces inside him, that he'd thought were permanently sealed. He tightened his grip on the multi-tool, a familiar weight in his hand, his only tether to the reality he understood. All right, Lyra, lead the way, to the core, but you explain everything as we go, and don't try anything, alien. A soft, almost musical note resonated from her, a sound that felt like satisfaction.
Whoa.
I will explain, she promised. The faint shimmer around her brightened noticeably then, and he caught a fleeting glimpse of intricate patterns just beneath the surface, like glowing veins or markings. They pulsed briefly, then settled back into a diffuse radiance. It was beautiful, unsettling, and utterly alien. She turned, and without a sound, began to move deeper into the dark corridors of the derelict ship. Cale hesitated for only a second, then followed, his footsteps echoing loudly in the sudden quiet that fell after her movement. The low hum of the ship receding slightly, as if it was waiting for them to reach its heart before fully reawakening. The tension wasn't just in the potential danger or the mystery of her species. It was in the charged space between them. The pull he felt towards her, despite everything his mind screamed at him. He was walking into darkness, following a glowing enigma, whose culture seemed to think his voice was a sacred artifact. This was definitely not a typical salvage run. They navigated the ship's interior, a labyrinth of dark, silent corridors choked with dust and the decay of centuries. Cale relied on his suit light and intimate knowledge of derelict architecture, where walls would be weak, where floors might give way.
Whoa.
Lyra moved beside him, or slightly ahead, with an unnerving familiarity, as if she had only left yesterday. He still couldn't see her clearly, her form a shifting outline of internal light, but he felt her presence acutely. The air around her thrummed with that low frequency, and being close amplified the strange vibration in his own chest, a constant subtle pressure that made him feel both hyper-aware and slightly off balance. "How do you know where you're going?" he asked, his voice low. The sound felt amplified in the silence, his normal cadence, somehow louder and more resonant than usual. Lyra paused, her head turning towards him. Even without seeing her eyes, he felt her gaze. "The heart, it is not merely a vessel, it is interconnected. My awareness, it was linked, even in stasis, to its core functions. I perceive its structure, its pathways." Her internal glow pulsed with a gentle rhythm, like a slow breath. "Think of it like a body. I know its veins, its organs." "So you're telepathic with your ship?" Cale asked, trying to process the concept. "More than that," she said softly.
Whoa.
"It is part of us, part of the Vespera, created from living technology, grown, not built, grown, a living spaceship." That explained the unnerving feeling of the hull vibrating faintly. Why was structural stress, but something like slow, deep respiration. He shook his head, trying to file away this new layer of alien weirdness. "Okay, living ship, fine. Does this living ship have traps, defense systems that might mistake me for the scourge?" Lyra made that soft musical sound again. "Not traps per se.
Whoa.
Safeguards, to protect its core, its passengers, against intrusion. But with the resonance, it should recognize you as allied." "Should?" Cale echoed, the word tight. "Should" isn't exactly reassuring.
Whoa.
"The resonance is the key," she repeated patiently. "Proximity amplifies. You are not a stranger in this place, Cale. You are welcomed." The glow around her brightened slightly as she said the last word, and he felt a faint warmth bloom in his chest, radiating outwards. It wasn't just physical heat. It felt like genuine welcome, a foreign sensation he hadn't felt directed at him in a long time. It disarmed him just enough that he almost stumbled over a loose piece of plating. He recovered, irritation bubbling up, to counteract the unsettling warmth. "Welcomed? I broke in here looking for scrap. I didn't get an invitation. You were drawn." Lyra countered softly. "The heart calls to the resonance when it requires awakening." "You answered." "I answered a ping on my scanner," Cale grumbled. "I didn't know it was a booty call from a giant, frozen, living spaceship." Lyra was silent for a moment, and he felt a distinct sense of processing from her. "Booty call," she repeated, testing the phrase. It sounded even stranger in her resonant voice. "Is this a human idiom for attraction, for bonding?" Cale groaned, running a hand over his face. "No, not exactly. It's complicated. It means..."
Whoa.
showing up somewhere unexpected, for illicit purposes. Illicit purposes, she echoed, her internal light pulsing faster now, like rapid thought. Intriguing. Ah, my mate. Our bonding ritual involved resonance, harmonization, and sensory exploration. There was a phase that could be described as illicit. Heat prickled on the back of Kale's neck. Whoa. He definitely didn't want to go down this road. Okay, new rule. No comparing me to your mate's illicit purposes phase. Got it. Understood, she said, though he felt a distinct wave of curiosity radiating from her. Her glow shifted, subtle patterns swirling within the luminescence for a fleeting second. It was like looking at an alien thought process made visible. He quickly looked away, focusing on the path ahead. They reached a larger chamber, dominated by a vast recessed console, humming with a faint, deep power. It was covered in intricate, glowing symbols that mirrored the patterns he'd briefly seen on Lyra. This felt like the heart of the ship. The air here was warmer, richer, less stale, the core, Lyra announced, stopping before the console. Her glow intensified, casting intricate, shifting patterns onto the floor and walls. The low resonance in the room grew stronger, vibrating through the deck plating. Kale approached cautiously, looking at the console. It wasn't built with human hands in mind. It curved, it flowed, it pulsed with soft light. He reached out a hand, stopping just short of touching the surface. So how does this work? I just talk to it. You provide the resonance, Lyra explained, moving closer to the console herself. The core requires the specific pattern. You place your hand here. She indicated a section of the console where the glowing patterns seemed particularly intricate, swirling, and coalescing. And you allow the resonance to flow. Speak, if it helps focus. The heart listens to the pattern, not the word. He stared at the spot she indicated. It was warm, inviting, and pulsated with that same low frequency. It felt like putting his hand into something alive. It felt profoundly intimate, in a way that had nothing to do with sex, and everything to do with fundamental connection. Every instinct told him this was a terrible idea. But the ship was stirring. The conflict she spoke of might still be out there. And Lyra was a living being he'd taken responsibility for by thawing her. He needed this ship to work. He needed to understand. Taking a deep breath, Kale placed his palm flat against the indicated spot on the console. The surface felt smooth, warm, and subtly yielding, like firm skin. The glowing patterns under his hand swirled faster, and the vibration intensified dramatically, filling his entire body. He felt a strange echoing inside his own skull, a sense of his voice box resonating in ways he'd never imagined. It was overwhelming, disorienting.
Just speak, he mumbled, his voice coming out as more of a vibratory hum than actual words. He focused, trying to produce sound despite the internal shaking. Okay, ship, wake up. Let's go home. As he spoke, the patterns under his hand flared with blinding intensity. Lyra's glow beside him brightened in response, mirroring the light, and he felt her presence tighten, leaning into the moment. The low thrum of the ship swelled into a powerful resonant chord that filled the chamber, drowning out everything else. The console before him shimmered, and new patterns emerged, shifting, changing, resolving into complex configurations that pulsed with data. Kale felt dizzy, lightheaded, like he just mainlined pure energy. His hand was fused to the console by the sheer force of the vibration and light. He looked over at Lyra, or where he perceived her to be, her glowing form a beacon in the blinding light of the core. He felt utterly exposed, vulnerable, and completely dependent on her understanding of what was happening. This wasn't just turning on lights. It felt like merging with something vast and ancient. He hoped desperately that she was right about the ship recognizing his resonance as allied, because right now, he felt less like a key and more like a sacrifice. The intense light from the core console subsided slowly, leaving Kale blinking, his vision swimming with afterimages. He pulled his hand away,
the connection breaking with a palpable snap. His palm tingled, and the faint vibration in his chest lessened, though it didn't entirely disappear. The chamber wasn't fully lit, but a softer, more consistent bioluminescence emanated from the walls and ceiling, revealing the intricate, organic architecture of the core. It was like standing inside a giant, glowing crystal, or a network of luminous vines. Lyra was standing closer now, her own glow having returned to its previous softer intensity. She looked different. Her posture was more erect, her movements sharper, more focused. The air around her felt calmer, the frantic energy of the core's awakening, replaced by a steady hum of power. It worked. Kale breathed, flexing his tingling fingers. The ship, it's awake. It responds. Lyra confirmed, her voice clearer, stronger than before. The resonant quality was still there, but it felt more controlled now. Systems are cycling, life support is normalizing, basic navigation is accessible. She gestured to the console, which now displayed patterns that looked less like abstract art and more like functional interfaces, albeit utterly alien ones. Your resonance, it was sufficient. The heart accepts you. He felt a strange mix of relief and unease. Relief that he hadn't blown up the ship or been integrated into its circuitry. Unease at the thought of being accepted by a living vessel based on his voice matching a dead alien's. Accepted. Great. So what do we do now? Find somewhere safe. Contact someone. Lyra turned fully towards him, and for the first time, he felt she was looking at him, not just through him to the resonance. He still couldn't see specific features in the diffused light, but he felt the intensity of her gaze. Contact is impossible, she said. The Scourge, they monitor all known frequencies. Any signal would draw them. Her glow dimmed slightly again, mirroring the shift in her mood. And there is nowhere safe. Not for the Vespera, not anymore. That hit him harder than it should have. He was a scavenger, a lone wolf. He didn't have a home, or a species to protect. But the quiet despair in her voice was affecting. He found himself wanting to push back against it. Nowhere. There's a whole galaxy out there. The galaxy is vast, Kale, she agreed. But the Scourge is persistent, ancient. They have devoured worlds, entire civilizations. He ran a hand over his face again. Right. Interstellar apocalypse. Just what he needed on a Tuesday. Okay, so no beacon, no safe harbor. What was the plan before? Before getting frozen. To find a hidden world, Lyra said, her voice regaining some of its strength. A place untouched. To begin anew. The heart contains the genetic archives, the knowledge everything needed to rebuild. She paused, and her glow pulsed, creating intricate swirling patterns for a moment, faster than before, conveying a complex surge of information or emotion. But the destination was lost. The final coordinates were compromised before stasis. My mate, he knew the route. He carried the map, not on him, within him, encoded. Kale stared at her. Encoded within him. You mean, genetically? More than that, Lyra said. Within his resonance signature, a unique harmonic sequence. It was the final safeguard. Only his voice, his specific pattern, could access the hidden pathway within the heart's navigation core. And his voice, Kale's voice, matched that pattern. Suddenly, the absurdity twisted into a heavy burden. He wasn't just a key to wake the ship. He was potentially the key to their only hope of finding a new home. The ship hummed around them, a gentle living presence, waiting for him to provide the destination. You're saying, my voice has the star charts embedded in it? He asked incredulously. Lyra tilted her head. Not embedded, Kale. It is the map, the specific resonant frequency. It unlocks the hidden sequence in the core. It was keyed to my mate, and your voice possesses that same key. Her glow brightened with quiet hope. You are the only one who can guide the heart. Kale felt dizzy again, but this time, it wasn't from energy overload. It was from the sheer weight of what she was saying. His life had been small, focused on immediate survival, on the next meal, the next score. Now he was being told he held the fate of an entire species in his vocal cords. It was too much.
It was ridiculous. It was terrifying. And part of him, the part he usually kept buried under layers of cynicism and self-preservation, was stirred by the magnitude of it. "I'm not a pilot," he said, the words coming out rough. "I fly a beat-up freighter. I scavenge. I'm not a savior." "You possess the key, Kale," Lyra stated, her voice gentle but unwavering. "The heart responds to you. I respond to you." Her glow intensified slightly, and he felt that wave of warmth again, stronger this time, radiating, not just from her form, but seeming to fill the space between them. It felt like a physical touch, a profound connection happening on a level beyond skin. It was intimate, raw, and utterly disarming. His heart hammered in his chest, responding not just to the pressure of the resonance, but to the genuine, alien warmth of her perceived gaze. He looked at her, seeing only the glowing outline, the shifting internal light, and felt a pull he couldn't understand or resist. The air in the core hummed, charged with power and anticipation. Kale felt exposed, raw. His past flashed behind his eyes, the reasons he kept people at a distance, the betrayals that had carved caution into his bones. Now this alien woman, Lyra, was looking at him, through him with her resonance, and claiming he was the key to everything, not just to her ship, but to her people's future, and claiming it with an intensity that bypassed all his defenses. "The map, the resonance pattern," Lyra said, her voice soft but urgent. "We must access it. Now that the heart is awake, its shields will regenerate, but it will take time. We are vulnerable until then." Kale nodded, pushing aside the dizzying implications of being a biological star chart. "Survival first, always." "How do we do that?" "Do I put my hand back on the console and sing the alphabet?" Lyra made that soft, musical sound again, something akin to amusement. "Not the alphabet, Kale. It requires a deeper connection, a more focused resonance." She moved towards the console, her glowing form reflecting in its smooth, dark surface. "The core needs to analyze the pattern, to align with it." She turned back to him, and her glow brightened, pulsing with anticipation. "It requires integration." Kale felt a prickle of apprehension. "Integration? What does that mean?" "A blending," she explained, her voice lower, softer, carrying that unsettling intimacy of the resonant signatures, mine the hearts, and yours. "It is how my mate accessed the hidden pathways."
Through shared resonance, shared self, shared self. The words felt heavy, charged. This was moving beyond technical interfaces and into something far more personal, more vulnerable. Lyra extended her hand towards the console again, then towards him. The process requires proximity, physical connection to the core, and alignment. He looked from her hand to the console, then back to her glowing form. He felt a surge of that strange warmth radiating from her, a silent invitation that resonated deep within him. Alignment, shared self. He wasn't sure he understood, but the intensity of her presence, the quiet power emanating from the core, the urgency in her voice, it all pulled him in. His scavenger instincts screamed danger, but his buried longing for connection, for meaning beyond survival, warred against it. He felt seen by her, in a way no one ever had, seen not for his skills or his past, but for something fundamental about his being. How do we align?" he asked, his voice rough. Lyra took a step closer, her hand still extended, palm up, her glow intensified slightly, drawing his gaze, drawing him in. "Through touch," she said simply. "Through resonance. Through acceptance." Touch, acceptance. The words hung in the air. His past trust issues flared. Acceptance was a dangerous thing. But then he looked at her, this ancient being, who saw something sacred in his ordinary voice, and felt the undeniable pull. The low hum of the heart around them felt like a silent witness, a vast, living entity, waiting for them to bridge the gap. He reached out, tentative. His fingers brushed hers. Her skin, or whatever substance, made up her form beneath the glow, felt smooth, warm, and subtly firm, like holding something both solid and fluid. The touch sent a jolt through him, a cascade of pure sensation, unlike anything he'd experienced. Her internal light pulsed where they connected, and the vibration in his chest flared into a powerful thrum. Lyra gently took his hand, her grip surprisingly strong. "Close your eyes, Kale," she whispered, her voice a low, resonant melody that vibrated through his bones. "Feel the heart, feel the connection." He hesitated, but her presence was overwhelming, compelling. He closed his eyes. The world narrowed to sensation, the warmth of her hand, the pervasive hum of the ship, the intense vibration in his chest, centering on his voice box. It felt like his very essence was being pulled outwards, merging with hers, with the ship. He felt Lyra shift, guiding his hand back to the console, pressing it flat against the smooth, warm surface beside hers. Their hands were interlocked, pressed against the pulsing core. Her form leaned against his side, her warmth and presence radiating through him. It was physical, intimate, intensely sensory, yet completely different from human touch. He felt the intricate patterns of her internal light pulsing through her hand, into his, merging with the vibration emanating from the console and his own chest. A soft, melodious tone emanated from Lyra, a pure note that harmonized with the ship's hum and his internal resonance. It was like a key turning in a lock. He felt a sudden, overwhelming surge of data, not as images or words but as pure pattern, pure frequency. It was dizzying, vast, containing information about stellar bodies, gravitational fields, ancient paths through the void. It was the map. It was the destination. He gasped, the sensation too much. His body tensed, overwhelmed by the influx. Lyra's grip tightened on his hand, and her other arm circled his waist, pulling him closer against her side. Her resonant hum deepened, becoming a comforting anchor in the sensory storm. He felt her presence grounding him, sharing the load, navigating the influx of alien data. Her body felt different, pressed against his, warm and yielding, yet radiating a calm strength that seeped into his bones. It was raw, exposed, and intimately connected. He felt the core accessing the information, processing the frequencies, aligning the hidden pathways. The ship's hum changed, shifting to a higher, more complex pitch. A sense of direction solidified in his mind, a vector pointing out into the black. It was the destination, their potential home. The intensity slowly receded, leaving him breathless, leaning against Lyra's side. The patterns on the console shifted, displaying the complex map he had just experienced. A route through the stars, hidden for centuries, now unlocked by his voice. Lyra pulled back slightly, but her arm remained around his waist. He opened his eyes. The core chamber was still softly lit, the console displaying the star chart. He looked down at her, the glowing outline of her form seeming more distinct, now radiating a quiet power. He felt changed, connected in a way he couldn't articulate. "It is done," Lyra whispered, her voice resonant with relief, and something else he couldn't name. "The heart has the path. We have the path." She looked up at him, or he felt her gaze, and her internal light pulsed with a slow, powerful rhythm. He felt the warmth of her presence, the undeniable pull that had nothing to do with his voice now, and everything to do with the shared experience, the profound intimacy of their connection to the core. He was trembling slightly, his mind still reeling from the data influx, his body humming with lingering resonance. He was no longer just a scavenger. He was the key, the map, the link to an alien future. And standing here with Lyra's arm around him, the weight of it felt both terrifying and strangely, undeniably right. He needed a moment. The influx of information from the core, the sheer alienness of it all, had left him feeling raw and exposed. He gently disentangled himself from Lyra, taking a step back. His mind raced, trying to process the star chart that felt somehow imprinted onto his consciousness. A series of jumps, waypoints, gravitational slingshots, through uncharted space. It wasn't just coordinates, it was a path felt experienced. Lyra watched him,
her glowing form still radiating that subtle warmth, but without the direct pressure of physical touch. The low hum of the core continued, a steady beat now, no longer waiting but functioning. That was a lot, Kale said, running a shaky hand through his hair. You didn't exactly mention. It felt like shoving my brain into a cosmic router. Lyra tilted her head, her internal light pulsing gently. The process is immersive, she conceded. For some it can be overwhelming. My mate was uniquely suited. His connection was profound. There it was again, his mate. The comparison stung, a subtle abrasion against the raw surface of his vulnerability. He knew logically that his voice was a match, a tool for her species' survival. But after the intense physical intimacy of connecting to the core, the thought that he was just a stand-in for someone else, a means to an end, felt sharp and unwelcome. He just shared something profound, terrifying, and utterly unique with her, and she referenced the ghost in the machine. Right, Kale said, his voice flat, pulling his emotional shields back up. With a clank he felt deep inside. Uniquely suited, like a specific wrench fits a specific bolt. Lyra's glow dimmed slightly, and he felt a wave of confusion or hurt radiate from her. Kale, that is not what I meant. The resonance, it is part of the Vesper bond. My mate, his connection was resonant, yes, but it was also him, his self. Yeah, well, I'm not him, Kale said, turning away from her to stare at the alien star chart now displayed on the core console. The glowing lines looked cold, impersonal, just data now that the intense sensory input was gone. I'm just the guy who happened to have the right sound wave bouncing around his throat. Don't mistake the hardware for the user. He heard her move closer behind him, felt the warmth of her presence again, although she didn't touch him. You are not merely hardware, Kale. The heart recognizes the resonance. It accepts the source. It accepts you. Because I sound like someone else, he finished bitterly. He hated feeling like this. He hated how easily she could make him feel something, even something as simple as feeling like a replacement part. His past was littered with moments where he'd been used, discarded. He wouldn't let it happen again, not even by a glowing ancient alien. Lyra was silent for a long moment. The air grew heavy with unspoken tension, thicker than the dust in the derelict corridors. He could feel her trying to understand, her alien mind perhaps struggling with the nuances of human insecurity and pain. The resonance, it is the key, she said finally, her voice softer now, tinged with something that sounded like sadness. It is why the heart responded, why the pathway unlocked. But the presence, the energy, that is unique to you, Kale. My mate's presence was different. His resonance had a weight. Yours has a different texture, a different light. He finally turned back to her, skeptical. A different texture, a different light. What does that even mean? Lyra extended a hand towards him again, hesitating. Her glow pulsed slowly. It is difficult to explain in your language. Our connection is deeper than words. Deeper than visual cues. She slowly lowered her hand. When you touched the core, when our resonance joined, I felt you, Kale, not as an echo of him, as you, your history, your wounds. He flinched internally. His wounds, she felt his wounds. The thought was terrifying. He kept those buried deep. He never let anyone see them. The idea that she could perceive his pain, his history, through this strange resonant connection. It was too much. It was like she could see right through his defenses. You don't know anything about me, he said, his voice low and dangerous. I felt the jagged edges, Lyra said softly, her glowing form seeming to radiate empathy. The places where you were broken. The core reflected it back. Resonances, revealing. She paused, and her glow pulsed with what felt like deep sincerity. My mate was whole. You are not. That is your light, Kale. The light of survival against brokenness. It is compelling, broken. He didn't know how to respond to that. He wanted to retreat, to lash out, to break something. But looking at her, at the genuine alien curiosity and acceptance in her luminous form, he couldn't. He just stood there, breathing hard,
the hum of the ship, and the lingering resonance in his chest, a constant reminder of the impossible situation he was in. He was tied to this ancient alien, to her living ship, to the fate of her species, by something as fundamental as the sound of his voice, and by a connection that seemed to bypass all his carefully constructed walls. And she saw his brokenness, and called it compelling. It was the most terrifying and strangely appealing thing anyone had ever said to him. Compelling enough to ignore the fact that I'm not the guy your ship was waiting for. He challenged, needing to poke at the wound, needing to test if she was real. Lyra didn't back down. Her glow remained steady. He was the key, she said. You are the key. The function is the same. The form is new, unexpected. She took a step closer, and he felt the subtle warmth again. But you are here, Kale. He is not. The resonance guided you here, not by chance, by necessity. Perhaps it is time for a new form of the key. The way she said it, the gentle invitation in her tone and presence, bypassed his defenses entirely. A new form of the key, not a replacement, but something new, adapted. It was an acceptance of him, brokenness and all, that he hadn't realized he was desperate for. He felt a lump form in his throat. The map is set, Lyra said, her voice returning to a more practical tone, though the underlying intimacy remained. The heart knows the path, but operating the vessel, navigating the void, that requires more than resonance. It requires skill, and says, it requires power. Kale snapped back to the present task. Right, flying a giant, ancient living spaceship through hostile space to a hidden planet. He wasn't a pilot, not like the ones who flew capital ships, but he could fly. He knew engines, navigation, making impossible jumps. I can fly, he said, his voice regaining some of its usual gruffness, though softened around the edges by the preceding emotional turmoil. Small craft, but the principles are the same. Where are the controls? Lyra gestured back to the core console, which now pulsed with different patterns, inviting interaction. Here, the core is the command center. Interface requires direct connection. She paused, her glow dimming slightly. And the heart, it requires energy, significant energy. The stasis reserves are depleting faster, now that systems are active. We need to find a power source, a massive one, before the heart sleeps again. Kale looked at the console, then around the vast, dormant chamber. Kale looked at the console, then around the vast, dormant chamber. A massive power source, out here, in the middle of nowhere. The derelict ship was their only option. It was dead, but Lyra had said it was wounded, not dead. The ship itself, he said slowly. It's not completely dead, is it? You said it was wounded, critically, but not inert. Lyra's glow brightened suddenly, a flash of surprise or realization. The core functions are operational, but the primary power nexus, it was severed in the attack. Deep within the vessel, she turned to him, her form radiated, severed in the attack. Deep within the vessel, she turned to him, her form radiated in urgency. If we could reach it, reconnect.
The heart would regain its full strength, its defenses. We could initiate the jump. He looked at her, saw the hope flaring in her luminous form, reach a severed power nexus deep in an ancient, wounded living ship. It sounded like a suicide mission, but it was their only chance. And the thought of this ship, of Lyra, powering down, slipping back into a silent slumber, felt wrong. He was tied to it now, to her. All right, Kale said, his decision made. The risk was immense, but the alternative was worse. Where is it, this nexus? Lyra pointed to a section of the core console, where a complex diagram of the ship pulsed with faint light. A section deep within the vessel glowed red. Deep within the vasculature, she said, using a term that made it sound even more like a body. The pathways will be unstable, damaged, and the safeguards, they will be most active near the heart of the vessel, protecting the wound. Unstable pathways, active safeguards, protecting a wound. It sounded like navigating a biological minefield, but they had to try. He looked at Lyra, saw the quiet strength in her luminous form, the hope that she placed in him, the unexpected connection between them. His voice was the key. Her knowledge was the guide. His grit was the engine. Let's go, Kale said, straightening his shoulders. To the nexus. To the heart of the heart. Lyra nodded, her glow steady, resolute. She turned and without hesitation, moved towards one of the corridors leading away from the core, the low hum of the ship following her, like a silent companion. Kale followed, his hand automatically going to the multi-tool on his belt. The quiet tension between them, the emotional weight of their shared vulnerability, and the cosmic absurdity of their connection, was a tangible thing in the air. But beneath it, a fragile sense of purpose had solidified. They were going to try and save a living ship and an ancient species. And it all started because his voice sounded like a ghost's. They navigated deeper into the heart of the Vesper, the architecture becoming stranger, more organic the further they went from the core. The walls seemed to pulse with soft internal light, like slow-beating veins. The pathways were indeed unstable, sections of the floor buckled or missing, conduits hanging like severed arteries. Kale moved cautiously, using his suit light to scan for hazards, while Lyra seemed to glide through the debris, her internal glow casting shifting, ethereal patterns. The safeguards are strengthening, Lyra warned, her voice a low hum beside him. The vessel perceives us approaching the wound. It attempts to protect itself. As she spoke, faint energy fields shimmered across the corridor ahead, visible only as distortions in the luminous air. They looked like translucent, wavering walls. Kale stopped short. Energy fields, how do we get past those? Resonance, Lyra said simply. They are keyed to intrusion, but your presence, your connection to the core, should allow passage. Together, she reached out and took his hand, her touch sending that familiar jolt of warmth and resonant vibration through him. Her grip was firm, reassuring. Walk with me, Kale. Allow the connection to flow. He nodded, trusting her implicitly in this alien environment. Holding her hand, feeling the strange solidity and radiant warmth of her form, they stepped towards the shimmering field. As they approached, the vibration between them intensified, pulsing outwards. The energy field wavered, distorted, and then simply parted, like water before a ship's prow. They walked through the gap, the air crackling faintly around them. On the other side, the field snapped shut, shimmering back into place. Kale let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Okay, that was interesting. The heart accepts your resonance, Lyra said, squeezing his hand gently before releasing it. It recognizes you as part of itself, now, part of itself. The implications of that sank in slowly. He wasn't just walking through a ship, he was walking through a living conscious entity that now considered him linked. It was unsettling, but also gave him a strange sense of belonging, however unwanted. They encountered more safeguards as they went, localized gravity shifts that tried to pull them off balance, bursts of sonic energy that felt like being hit by an invisible wall of sound, sections of corridor that sealed shut, only to reopen when Lyra's presence, amplified by his proximity, resonated against them. Each challenge forced them closer, relying on that resonant connection, on Lyra's knowledge and his practical presence. The constant required proximity, the shared physical and sensory experience, blurred the lines between them. He was becoming attuned to her subtle shifts in glow and resonance, reading them like facial expressions. She, he suspected, was reading him in ways he couldn't even fathom. They reached a large chamber, filled with the pulsing light and complex structure that marked the primary power nexus. But between them and the core of the nexus lay a massive tangled network of glowing, interwoven tendrils that pulsed with raw energy. It looked like a giant, wounded organ, leaking light, and moving within the tendrils were defensive constructs, small, shimmering nodes that darted between the strands, emitting sharp, high-pitched frequencies that grated on Kale's teeth. The wound, Lyra whispered, her glow dimming with concern, and the internal defenses, they are strong here. The defensive nodes converged on them, their high-pitched emissions intensifying, causing Kale's head to ache. It wasn't just sound, it was a targeted disruption of resonance. He felt the connection between him and Lyra waver. The shared vibration threatened. Lyra cried out, her form flickering. They are attacking the resonance link, Lyra said, her voice strained. Whoa. We must overwhelm them. How? Kale yelled over the grating noise. Focus, Lyra urged, reaching out to him, her hand trembling slightly. Her glow was faint, struggling against the disruptive frequencies. Focus the resonance. With me, projected outwards. He didn't understand, but he trusted her. He grabbed her hand, holding on tight. He closed his eyes, trying to ignore the painful frequencies, and focused on the strange vibration in his chest, the one that had linked him to her and the ship. He pictured it as a sound, a steady, warm hum, and tried to amplify it, push it outwards, blending it with Lyra's struggling presence. He felt her focusing with him, their shared vibration intensifying, pushing back against the grating noise. It was a raw, visceral effort, like screaming with his entire being. The warmth between their joined hands flared, and Lyra's glow surged, no longer faint, but powerful, pushing back the encroaching shadows. The combined resonance hit the defensive nodes like a physical wave. They recoiled, their high-pitched frequencies faltering. The network of tendrils pulsed violently, as if in pain. Now, Lyra cried, we must access the nexus point. It is unprotected. She pulled him forward, deeper into the tangle of tendrils. They moved through the glowing network, the air thick with energy. The defensive nodes, though pushed back, were still present, circling, waiting. They reached the heart of the wound, a central point, where the glowing tendrils met a mass of ruptured dark material. The primary conduit, Lyra exclaimed, pointing to a thick, glowing cable that was severed, its end sparking with raw energy. We must reconnect it to the core nexus. Here, she indicated a pulsing node near the center of the wound. Kale stared at the sparking cable, at the pulsing node. This was raw, dangerous power. He was a scavenger. He jury-rigged plenty of connections, but nothing on this scale, nothing that felt this alive and wounded. And the defensive nodes were starting to recover, their grating frequencies returning, closer now. I need to get that cable to that node, Kale said, assessing the distance, the unstable ground, the sparking energy. It's dangerous, and those things are coming back. I will hold them, Lyra stated, stepping forward, slightly positioning herself between Kale and the returning node. Her glow intensified, and she began to hum a low, steady tone, a pure resonant frequency that seemed to push back against the grating disruption. It was an anchor in the storm of noise and light. Lyra, no, it's too dangerous. Kale protested. My resonance is tied to the heart's health, she said, her voice firm, though he felt the strain in her presence. I can distract them. You must mend the wound, quickly. He looked at her, at the resolute glow of her form, shielding him from the darting, disruptive nodes. He saw the trust she placed in him, the silent plea for him to act. There was no time to argue. He was the only one with the practical skills, however crude, to attempt this. All right, he said, his voice steady. He pulled out his multi-tool, extending its plasma cutter. He needed to prepare the severed end, somehow make it connectable to the nexus. It was a long shot, maybe impossible, but they had no other choice. He moved carefully towards the sparking cable, leaving Lyra to face the internal defenses alone, relying on their shared fragile resonance to keep her safe, to keep them safe. The weight of her trust, of the responsibility he'd somehow stumbled into, settled heavy on his shoulders. The air thrummed with Lyra's steady, anchoring resonance, a pure note pushing back against the chaotic, grating frequencies of the defensive. Kale worked feverishly, the plasma cutter on his multi-tool, whining as he attempted to prepare the severed end of the massive power conduit. It was like trying to suture a live wire the size of his arm. The material was alien, organic yet metallic, sparking unpredictably. Lyra's hum was a constant presence behind him, a shield he could feel in his bones, but he could sense the strain in it, the effort it took to hold back the ship's desperate wounded defenses. He glanced over his shoulder. Lyra was standing firm, her glowing form a beacon, but the defensive nodes were pressing closer, darting at the edges of her resonant field, chipping away at her shield. He could hear their high-pitched grating getting louder.
Feel the pressure build. Hurry, Kale. Lyra's voice was tight, the resonant shield flickering slightly. They adapt. My resonant. It will not hold forever. He swore under his breath. The conduit end was fused, ragged. He needed to clean it, shape it, make it fit the Nexus. His multi-tool wasn't designed for this kind of repair. He needed something else. His eyes scanned the chamber wildly, looking for anything he could use. Debris littered the floor. Pieces of ruptured conduits, segments of structural material. Then he saw it. A piece of the same material as the power conduit, but smaller, smoother, like a cap or a connector. It was damaged, cracked, but maybe he could adapt it. Found something. He shouted, scrambling towards the piece. The defensive nodes shifted, some turning towards him, their grating frequencies focusing, trying to disrupt his connection, his coordination. His movements felt clumsy, his thoughts fragmented. Lyra's hum surged, a sudden powerful note that drove the nodes back momentarily. He felt her pour her energy into the shield, giving him precious seconds. I am here, Kale. Focus. I hold the pattern. He reached the piece, grabbing it. It felt warm, pulsing faintly in his hand. He needed to reshape it, fuse it to the conduit, and use it as a makeshift connector. It was risky. The material was unstable, but it was their only shot. He raced back to the severed conduit, the defensive nodes closing in. Again their great frequencies piercing Lyra's shield. Her hum was strained now, wavering. He could feel her energy reserves drain, feel her pain through that connection. Working desperately, Kale applied his plasma cutter to the found piece, then to the conduit, trying to fuse them together. Sparks flew, energy crackled, the heat intense. The air filled with the smell of hot metal, and something else, something organic and burnt. The grating frequencies were deafening, making it hard to think, hard to see. Lyra cried, a sharp. Her shield flickered violently. He risked a glance. The defensive nodes were the defensive nodes were right on her glowing form, battering her. For dead rusted frequencies, her light was dimming rapidly. He roared, his own voice raw, amplifying his internal resonance, pushing it outwards, trying to bolster her shield, trying to resonate with her pain. He slammed the makeshift connector, pointing it into the conduit, holding it in place. It was crude, ugly, but it held. Now he just needed to get it to the Nexus node. The grating frequencies intensified, overwhelming Lyra's hum. Her glow was barely visible now, just a faint, flickering outline. The nodes were closing in, preparing to strike. He felt the connection between them thinning, like a fraying thread. Lyra let go, he yelled, knowing she was pushing herself past her limit. Get back, no. Her voice was a faint whisper, carried on the last remnants of her resonance. You must connect. The heart needs. He couldn't hear the. Her glow winked out. The grating frequencies surged. Focusing entirely on. But the connection to the core, for minutes ago, held, waiting for the. The deep unwavering pulse beneath the chaos. Ignoring the pain, the disorientation, Kale lifted the conduit, and, guided by the pulsing light of the Nexus node, he stumbled, fighting the disruptive frequencies, fighting the internal defenses now swarming around him. He saw the nodes, small, shimmering, closing in. He was exposed. He lunged forward, shoving the fused conduit end towards the pulsing node. There was a blinding flash of light, a deafening crackle of energy. The grating frequencies vanished. Silence fell, absolute and abrupt, broken only by the deep, resonant hum of the heart. Surging with power, Kale collapsed, panting, the silence ringing in his ears. He looked up. The nexus point was a nexus again, the conduit, reconnected, flowing with intense, steady light. The tangled tendrils around it pulsed with renewed vigor. He had done it. He had mended the wound. Then he looked around the chamber. The defensive nodes were gone. The grating frequencies were gone. And Lyra. He couldn't see her anywhere. The air around him felt empty, devoid of her warmth, her presence, that constant, anchoring resonance. Lyra, he croaked, his voice raw, suddenly feeling the profound, terrifying silence. Lyra, he scrambled to his feet, scanning the chamber. Nothing, just the pulsing lights of the reactivated nexus and the deep hum of the heart. He felt a wave of cold dread wash over him.
Had the disruptive frequencies, or the backlash from the reconnection, had they, Lyra, he shouted again, louder this time, his voice echoing in the suddenly vast space. He needed to see her, needed to feel her presence. He had focused on the task, shut everything else out. But now that it was done, the silence where she had been was unbearable. He had been so focused on saving the ship, on the physical task, he hadn't fully grasped the danger to her, to their connection. He had failed to protect her. The deep hum of the heart pulsed steady and powerful, but offered no comfort. He was alone in the glowing heart of the ship, the key who had unlocked its potential, but perhaps at the cost of the one being who had seen past his defenses. He knelt, searching the floor, the debris, praying to whatever indifferent cosmic forces were out there, that he would see that faint, unmistakable glow, feel that unique, warm presence again. The silence was his answer, thick and suffocating. Lyra, he whispered, the word aching in his throat. He had fixed the ship, but he might have broken the only connection that had ever truly mattered. Kale, the sound was faint, a mere whisper, but it cut through the silence like a laser. It was Lyra's voice, weak but undeniably hers. He spun around, scanning the floor near where she had stood, near the tangled tendrils, and there, almost lost amongst the debris, was a faint, flickering point of light. Not the steady glow he was used to, but a struggling ember of luminescence. He rushed towards it, dropping to his knees. It was Lyra. Her form was barely visible, the internal light so dim it was almost gone. She lay amidst the ruptured tendrils, her movements weak. The disruptive frequencies had drained her, pushed her to the brink. Lyra, he breathed, reaching out, hesitant. She was so faint, so fragile. He didn't want to hurt her. I held, she whispered, her voice thin. The resonance, it wavered, but did not break. He reached her, gently placing a hand near her side. Her form was cool, almost cold, the radiant warmth he'd become accustomed to barely present. But as his hand drew near, the faint light within her pulsed slightly, a tiny spark of response. You held them off, he said, his voice thick with relief, and something else, something he wouldn't name. You saved me. We saved the heart, she corrected weakly. The nexus is stable, Kale confirmed, looking back at the now powerfully pulsing nexus. Full power. You did it, Lyra. She made that soft musical sound, but it was faint, weary. We did it, Kale. He looked down at her, at the barely visible glow, and felt a fierce wave of protectiveness wash over him. She was vulnerable now, utterly dependent, and he was tied to her, not just by a resonant voice, but by shared danger, shared purpose, and the quiet intimacy of their connection. His carefully constructed walls felt like dust. We need to get you out of here, he said, gently trying to slide an arm under her form. It felt strangely light, insubstantial, yet solid. My energy, depleted, she whispered. The resonance too weak to sustain, my form. Okay, he said, trying to keep his voice steady.
He needed to get her somewhere safe.
Somewhere stable, where she could recover. The core chamber, maybe there was something there. He carefully lifted her, cradling her against his chest. Her faint glow pulsed weakly against him, a fragile spark. He felt the strange coolness of her form, a stark contrast to the warmth she usually radiated. He stood up, holding her carefully, and began to make his way back through the unstable pathways towards the core chamber. Every step was cautious, every shadow a potential threat. He was acutely aware of the silence now, the absence of the grating frequencies, but also the absence of Lyra's anchoring hum. All that remained was the deep, powerful pulse of the heart, their destination, their potential sanctuary. Reaching the core chamber felt like an eternity. He carried Lyra to the main console, setting her down gently on the smooth, slightly yielding surface near where they had connected. The console pulsed with power, and the glowing star chart, a testament to their success. Lyra's glow remained faint, flickering. She lay still, breathing shallowly. Kale knelt beside her, his hand hovering over her form. He felt helpless. He could fix ships, bypass security, fight off rivals, but he didn't know how to heal an alien being whose energy reserves were depleted.
Lyra,
He whispered,
what do you need?
"Is there anything on this ship that can help you?" She didn't respond immediately. Her faint glow pulsed, then a tiny, almost imperceptible pattern swirled within it, focusing towards the console. "The core," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "It is linked to the heart's healing systems. It can transfer energy to a bonded resonance." He looked at the console, then at her. Transfer energy to a bonded resonance. Did that mean his resonance, his connection to the core? "Me?" he asked, uncertainty in his voice.
All can transfer energy to you?
Her faint glow pulsed in what he recognized as a nod. "Our resonance is now linked to the heart. It recognizes our bond." She reached out a hand, a barely luminous shape against the dark surface, trembling slightly.
All.
"Place your hand back on the core, Kale. Near me.
All.
And allow the heart to flow." He didn't hesitate this time. He took her hand, holding it gently in his, feeling the fragile coolness of her form.
Whole.
With his other hand, he placed it back on the smooth, warm surface of the core console.
All. Near where their hands had joined before.
As his hand touched the console, the deep hum of the heart intensified. Lyra's faint glow brightened slightly, a flicker of hope. He focused not on specific sounds, but on the connection, on the sense of their shared resonance, his and hers, now linked to the vast, living power of the ship. He felt a warmth start in his chest, the vibration returning, growing stronger, flowing down his arm, into his hand, into the core, and he felt it flowing from the core, through his other hand, into Lyra, into her faint, struggling glow. Her glow began to strengthen, slowly at first, then more steadily, drawing power from the heart through their connection. The coolness of her form lessened, replaced by that familiar radiant warmth. The intricate patterns within her luminescence became visible again, swirling and pulsing with renewed energy.
He watched, mesmerized, as her light returned,
Filling her form, chasing away the shadows of depletion. It felt profoundly intimate, this silent transfer of energy, this shared connection to the living ship, this reliance on their improbable bond. His own energy felt heightened, fueled by the process. He was giving, and yet receiving something vital in return, a sense of purpose, a connection that felt deeper and more real than anything he'd ever known. Lyra's glow reached its full strength, bright and steady, radiating warmth and calm. The faint patterns within her settled into a slow, rhythmic pulse. She stirred, taking a deeper breath. "The heart sustains me," she whispered, her voice gaining strength, regaining its resonant quality. "Through our bond." Kale removed his hand from the console, though he kept holding hers. Her hand felt warm, strong again. He looked at her, truly looked at her luminous form, feeling the overwhelming wave of relief wash over him. She was safe, she was recovering, because of their connection. "We did it," he said softly, the words heavy with unspoken emotion.
Whole.
"We saved the ship, and you saved me, back there."
Lyra turned her head towards him, her glowing form radiating quiet strength, and something that felt like gratitude, like acceptance. "We are linked now, Kale," she said, her voice a low resonant hum that vibrated between them.
By resonance.
By the heart, by experience. She squeezed his hand, her touch firm, warm, utterly real despite her alien nature. "You are no longer merely the key to my mate. You are the key to the heart, and to me." The intensity of her gaze, the raw honesty in her resonant voice, bypassed all his defenses. He had come seeking scrap, found a frozen alien, discovered his voice was a key to a living ship, in an ancient civilization's survival, faced death, felt his own deep wounds laid bare, and now found himself irrevocably tied to this luminous being. It was insane. It was magnificent. He didn't know what the future held, navigating uncharted space with an alien ark, and the last survivor of a dead species. But standing here, in the heart of the glowing vessel, holding Lyra's hand, he felt a sense of belonging he'd never thought possible. His voice had opened a door, and through it, he'd found not just a lost path, but a connection that resonated deeper than any sound. The journey ahead was uncertain, dangerous, but for the first time in a long time, he wasn't walking it alone. He was walking it with her. "All right, Lyra," Kale said, his voice steady, accepting. He met her gaze, or where he felt her gaze was, and for the first time, he didn't feel like a broken piece. He felt like part of something whole, something new. "Let's take this thing home." Lyra's glow brightened, pulsing with pure emotion, a response that needed no translation.
The deep hum of the heart echoed their sentiment, a powerful, resonant chord that filled the chamber, filled him, filled them both. It was the sound of a new beginning, born from silence, decay, and the improbable resonance of a human voice in an ancient, alien ship. The star chart on the console pulsed with light, a silent invitation to the unknown. They were ready.